we're going to talk about something which is, in theory, a lot of baloney, but it is actually going to help you a little bit. How do you know that light travels? Anybody? You don't. So, is it one moment after another, or how does light travel? Nobody? Waves. Waves and particles of the same thing. Both. So you're talking about a movement of consciousness, is that what you're saying? In theory, scientists have actually said that light travels. Imagine I put you in a very large warehouse and you light a match. And your match creates the circumference of that because that's what you believe. So you've lit a match, and the light of that particular match, that's the circumference because that's what you believe. That's what your ego has been convincing you of this entire time. What happens if I were to take my finger and all of a sudden turn it into a light bulb? Would it have a smaller circumference? Would it light up the whole warehouse? It all depends upon if I'm separate from the experience or if I am the experience, which is basically what Bart has been speaking about. Everybody has their own experience depending upon the level of consciousness. So people are not more spiritual or less spiritual. It all depends on how much consciousness they bring to the table. So everyone just assumes I'm more spiritual because I've read more books, or I'm more evolved. All of this is all baloney. It all depends on how much consciousness you're actually bringing to the table. I believe that when I light this match, it has a circumference and I can see, but there are also gray areas because that is my perception. My perception is that if I light this match, this is how much light I am. I'm in the universe, and we are led to believe that the universe is actually dark. Why? Because the brain has never seen light. So the reality is that we see everything in darkness. What happens if the entire cosmos is lit up like a Christmas tree? Right? But we perceive that everything is darkness because that is the perception. The brain has never seen light before. Consciousness, the way that our brain perceives. So it is like saying our eyes. Our eyes has never seen light. It is our visual cortex that actually does the interpretation of what we're seeing. So we are perceiving we have this much light because that is the projection of the perception of our eyes, the visual cortex, which is in the back of the brain. And the visual cortex is this mirror that says this much light. But what happens if you're wrong? What happens if you lit a match? And what happens if the whole room was lit up, but you only see because the projection of what you're experiencing or what you believe you're experiencing might not be a correct interpretation. We taste things, we might not be tasting the right thing. We might feel things, we might not be feeling. We're feeling, tasting, sensing, seeing based upon the amount of consciousness that we've brought to the table. How much? So it's not a book. It's not about how people have meditated, not how much money they got in the bank. It's all about how much consciousness they bring to the table. So the reality is that I could be in a warehouse and I can feel everything around me, light, no light, because that is the consciousness I bring to the table. I don't need to light a match because I can see everything clearly. Why? because I am consciousness. I'm not separate from consciousness. The ego tells you that you are separate from consciousness, but that's not correct. You see yourself separate. This is separate, this is separate, that is separate. You see yourself as everything is separation, but you're actually not separate at all. The more you understand that you are everything and nothing, you are every brick, you are everything in that particular room, you will not experience darkness. We experience darkness because, as I said earlier on, we are separate from everything, and because we see through the visual cortex, this is what we see, we actually believe. You do different medicine, it gives you different experiences. What happens if you are one single molecule? And that little molecule only sees its existence. So imagine that you're a little shed, tiny little shed, like a little bodega. And imagine that particular shed, or that particular bodega, imagine that it's got 1,000 bricks. And you're comfortable with all those bricks, so these are your molecules in the universe. So imagine you're comfortable in that particular experience. But if I all of a sudden were to put you in a large hall, or a large audience, or a large auditorium, you don't connect to everything any longer because you now feel separate, because you think it's too big, you can't relate. This is how the ego functions. The moment we are in an environment that there's too much space, the ego wants to control it, or doesn't let us see it, or doesn't let us feel. Can you be in a large auditorium and feel everything around you as you could in a little bathroom? The answer is yes, but that is not the way the ego, because the ego tells you you are now in a space it can't control. Therefore, you cannot connect to everything around you. So this is a very odd interpretation, but if you're in a very small space, you can feel safe, you can count every brick, you feel you can control that environment. But the moment you are in a large auditorium, the ego behaves very differently. So imagine now, these are molecules. Imagine that you have this much consciousness, because imagine that you have 1,000 light bulbs that you have lit up. Now you're chanting. And eventually, the mantra, you become the mantra, you're no longer separate from the mantra. Now all of a sudden, you have 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, and all of a sudden, all these molecules are all interconnecting with you, because all of a sudden, you begin to see you're no longer separate. You now feel these light bulbs, if you wish, or molecules, or consciousness. You can now feel these little drops of consciousness that before you perceived that you were separate from. Now, all of a sudden, you're chanting for an hour, and you actually can go into that large auditorium where the opera is sung, and you can basically feel the entire auditorium, because every molecule, you can feel this one and 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 this one. You are gradually expanding in consciousness. Why? Because you are gradually feeling that you are a part of everything and that you are not separate. So we've gone from a little bathroom, from a little bodega that you feel comfortable in. And imagine that every brick is a little molecule, is a little atom, a little stream of, a little drop of consciousness. And now you can relate to all the bricks, so that everything around you is that, and that you are it, and it is you, and you're not separate from that bodega. You are that bodega. You are that consciousness. But for the majority of people, as they move into new environments, strange environments, they all of a sudden feel separation and isolation, which is what happens to the majority of people. They immediately feel isolation. They immediately separate. The moment you are in a new environment, You're having dinner with strangers. The moment you are in any environment, the first thing the ego does, create separation, isolation. I'm just listening to these people. I don't know these people. You're not engaging. You're not part. You immediately withdraw, because that is what the ego does. It does not want you to be part of all these drops of consciousness, all these atoms. It doesn't want you to put one molecule, one drop together to the next. It wants you to be separate and isolated. This is part of the destruction of the ego. The ego creates this isolation and separation. The moment I am chanting, I've become the mantra. I'm no longer chanting, I've become the mantra. I'm no longer thinking of being in the audience, in the auditorium. I'm no longer trying to relate to every brick. I've become the auditorium. I'm no longer separate. I now have become and have fully embodied that entire. So that's for me to say, I've become a little drop, a little stream, I've become a river, and I've become an ocean. I'm moving from one little to the next, depending upon if I allow the ego to see myself as separate and isolated, or am I everything and I am not separate from anything? Actually, I am everything. When individuals, through meditation, through plant medicine, through Sapito, each individual has a different experience. Some all of a sudden feel like they're in the cosmos. Why? Because you are the cosmos, but you just don't remember, and the ego has told you you could not be the cosmos because you're just that toilet, you're just that bodega, you're that little shed. You could not be the cosmos. That's not possible. But for that short moment, as you are doing plant medicine, whatever that might be, and you're experiencing this, you're all of a sudden like, oh, I'm the universe. And then gradually, the next day, you become this isolated back into I instead of the I am. If I go back to the concept of lighting a match, either I see the match as the whole universe, or I just see it that it has confined restrictions, and it will only light up a little bit amount, because that is what my core belief system actually is. So am I the cosmos, or am I just this little match? Am I the light of the entire universe, or am I just this match? This is what happens within our makeup, our belief system. For some people, as they're doing plant medicine, they all of a sudden, whatever pain, whatever separation and isolation has created for them begins to absorb. So in other words, the ego creates all these little infrastructures. It creates little Legos, and it creates an entire Lego system of core I beliefs. So an experience we have, the experience itself has no impact, it's just an experience. It's how we bond the story to what we've experienced. So we have an experience, and that experience is just an experience. But the ego now needs to create the story and the infrastructure, how it's going to, how many pieces of Lego can I bond around that event, that particular story. This is how we are allowing the ego. So individuals do plant medicine, ayahuasca, samadhi, and all of a sudden, what stopped them from seeing themselves as the I am, and only saw themselves as an I in the universe, as all their pain begins to get absorbed, all of a sudden they're going, oh my God, I'm the universe! Because all their pain, all their obstacles, all the Lego blocks they've created within themselves from lifetime to lifetime, all of a sudden is gone, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa! And then gradually, if they don't change their outlook, their behavior, if they repeat the same stories, gradually all the Lego blocks all come back. We pick up where we left, unless we have great guides that help us how to leave the Lego blocks behind. Otherwise, the ego brings its entire trunk of goodies back to your doorstep, because it all depends on how much consciousness I bring to the experience. So if the guide that helps me through it is a very conscious individual, then I can bring consciousness to the experience. But if I do not bring an awareness into the experience, I will pick up all my Lego blocks and I will continue my journey, and that's it. Now, somebody does Sapito. And they can no longer just see themselves as separate, because the gift of this particular medicine, it cannot create the illusion or the story. So in other words, this beautiful medicine knows there's no separation. It knows there's no isolation. Everything is light. So individuals end up going into the experience and they feel this ultrasonic. Are you traveling? Are you moving out into the universe? Or there really is no distance, it's all just an illusion? Those are very big questions to fundamentally to ask. What are you experiencing? Or did you just go from that auditorium and now you're in the middle of a football field and boom, you realize you're everything and now you're the cosmos? And the reality is you are the cosmos, you are everything, there is no separation. Every molecule, every atom, everything bonds, connects, and whatever was separate, all of a sudden, unanimously, and that is what you are experiencing. You are experiencing this, all of a sudden, it's like someone turns on the entire electrical panel, and every light and lamp on that massive football field, boom, goes on, and you're like, what? But it's actually you turning you on. You are that electrical panel. You are that light. You are every molecule, every fiber in the entire universe. Who is turning who on? Whose light are you projecting? So the reality is that we are a projection. That's what we are. We are a projection of consciousness in this reality. But we gradually remove ourselves into the conceptual idea is that we only have this much light, a very minuscule amount of light. And as we become more conscious, we feel we're but is it actually recognizing we're no longer separate? We're actually, no, not separate. No, not separate. No, not separate. No, not separate. No, I'm not separate. No, I'm not separate. No, I'm not separate. Yeah, no, I'm not separate. No, not separate. Okay, we're at Mars now. Okay, really good. Now Pluto. Yeah, we're not separate. Okay, now next planet. Oh, the other universe. Oh, I'm not separate from anything. Vroom. Because we are not separate from anything. But we've created the story. So when you are in traffic and you are upset, you're creating separation. When you cook your dinner, you create separation. When you have to wait out to cash out, you create separation. The ego develops the entire conceptual part of separation and isolation. In the beginning, when we imagine you are the universe and you're just discovering yourself, you're not going anywhere new. Nothing is new. Nothing is separate. Nothing has actually ever left you. You are the entire cosmos. You are everything. You've just forgotten it. So, as you discover your own consciousness, people obviously gradually go through the detoxification of their ego identity. So people say, oh, spiritual growth is so difficult. Well, no, it's actually just letting go of your ego. Spiritual growth is actually, you are light. You've always been light. You got it all backwards. You're the whole universe, and you're telling me that letting go of your ego is a really difficult thing, and all your stories, and you're needing to control, and needing to understand, and oh, I see. So you're telling me that all of your human incarnations are so powerful, so more significant, more scary. All of your rejection, all of your abandonment, all of your disappointment, all of your confusion, your disappointment, your abuse, everything you've experienced, all your pain, that actually is more powerful than the cosmos. So you're God, you're the whole universe, and you're telling me that all these projections you've had are so much more important. And now you're telling me that you need to process, you need to let go, you need to grieve, you need to let... No, there's nothing to grieve, there's nothing to process, there's nothing to do. It never happened. This has all just been one big illusion. What is real is your consciousness. You are the universe. You're not separate from the universe. So we go through these incarnations until we recognize that we've never been separate from the universe, that we are the universe. We are consciousness. And when we experience consciousness for the first time, that's why I said to you, how do you know light travels? You're just turning the entire switchboard back on. So when someone all of a sudden goes woo woo, or feel they're moving out into the universe, and they're exploding into the universe, and they're coming back, did you really explode? Or are you that universe, and you just believed you went on a trip because your ego creates distance and separation, but in actuality you haven't really figured out that you are the universe. And you still think you're traveling somewhere, you still believe you're going somewhere, you still believe you're doing something, but in actuality you're there already. So what am I saying? I'm saying that you are the entire cosmos. But you only believe that your light is this far, or your light is this far, or your consciousness is this big, or your awareness is only this, or my story, my family, my mother, my rejection, my disappointment, my isolation. We create this cocoon experience. But what if I told you that you actually are the light of the entire cosmos? And when we exactly understand that there is no separation, there is no isolation, that we are the light that shines through the entire cosmos, that it would be a very difficult concept for you to understand, because you believe that darkness is actually a frightening place to be. The word Shiva, or the Kundalini, Lord Shiva, Bart has explained to you that the interpretation of that is that which is not I am. So what happens? We go through our awakening, so we think. It is just remembering that we are the universe. We're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything. We're not accomplish anything. We're just going, okay, yeah, I'm God, thanks. I'm the whole universe. The entire earth experience, human experience, is completely backwards. We are love and light. And you are living in a world where there are two universes simultaneously. Like the movie Avatar, you are connected to everything. And then there's the world of separation, isolation, anger, disappointment. And these two worlds are running parallel down the same cosmos at the same time. This is the entire playground for you to become a god. Earth is a place where the gods and gods are born. It's where you graduate. This is not hell. This is heaven. This is your opportunity to become a god. To recognize you're not separate, you're not isolated, and you to recognize that everything around you is you. This is your playground to recognize that you are divine. You are God. And when you absorb the whole universe into your existence with love, then you've become a god. It's your graduation. On the other end, it's like a birthing channel. All the other gods go, yay, he made it, another god, woohoo! Another Ganesh, another Shiva, another Lakshmi, yay! Because you come out this birth channel, because you recognize there is no separation, there is no isolation. You are everything, and you are divine. And you begin to recognize that there is no real human story here, just human ego, human makeup, human tragedy that doesn't exist to begin with. In order to become pure consciousness, you have to earn it. People are lazy. People are afraid. People are scared. People don't want to do the work. So you need to become a god. You need to learn how to stabilize yourself. Ask yourself, what am I hearing, seeing, tasting, and touching, and smelling? Is it real? Or is it just another trickery of this matrix? We are so seduced. So there are two worlds that are running simultaneously. One is a matrix. It rebuilds itself. It rewrites itself. It creates another story. It is always very interesting when people say to me, oh, COVID is, oh my goodness. Well, you've done it thousands of times. You've bought into the same thing. You're hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. You bought into it. Are you buying into it this time? And the answer is no. Because you've experienced the same thing. The same image reappears over. You just do not have a memory. The matrix repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats until you question, what am I seeing? Is it real? What am I tasting? Is it real? What am I smelling? Is it real? Are my senses being seduced? What is the truth? Love. Gods become gods and goddesses because they no longer become separate. Their separation, their isolation, no longer is unshakable, unquiverable. It can no longer influence. But as we move into consciousness, as we move in, we go through an extraction process. It is different for everybody. Lord Shiva, or the Kundalini, that in which I am not, that I am. When we move, it starts to remove all of our false ego identity. What we think, how we feel, all of our pain. And we begin to realize that we've been the conductor of all of this from beginning to end. We actually are the program matrix writer ourselves. Whew, that's a big one. We actually are writing the whole matrix, the whole pain story, the whole disappointment story. You and your ego are buddies, and it just keeps going from lifetime to lifetime, and we're going to enslave ourselves. And you are the writer and the creator of all this disappointment, all this pain, all this separation, all this isolation, until the soul is fully. So what does that mean? So until now, we think that the ego, or our personality, is who we are, but we're not that. We are just consciousness. And so this intelligence of whom we are, this light, this luminosity to the universe, is our soul. Well, it's easier to relate to something that has flesh, and that is something we can touch, and something that we can control, and something that we can manage. But when we're just consciousness and light, we don't identify with that. That presence, we cannot identify with that because it has no substance. It's just air. It is nothing. And so therefore, but until you gradually focus your entire energy onto this inner self of yours, this inner light, this inner essence of who you are, you begin to realize that vroom, vroom, this pulsation, this movement. So there's a seed inside of you. And that seed is the blue pearl. And that blue pearl is the seed of the entire soul. This is who you are. And that blue pearl, vroom, 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 vroom. It has the whole universe like a big om, moving through you. And this pulsation and this vibration is you. That is your soul. That is who you are. And when we take all of our attention and all of our focus and only seed ourselves within the presence of that Om, then we're not traveling anywhere. That little seed, that little inner self can become a bathroom, an auditorium, a football field, the entire cosmos, and all the planets. It all depends upon shifting 1 degree in consciousness. But we don't think that is possible. We're just trying to brush our teeth, deal with traffic, deal with relationships, because we think that is all real. But the truth is, the seed of our soul, the inner self, the Atman of whom we are, by shifting 1 degree, we can become as tiny as a kernel of sand, as big as an ocean, as big as the cosmos, or as big as the entire universe, all by shifting degree by 0.0001 degree. But your ego has given you false perception. And so we are looking outside the inner self, the seed of the soul, which is called the blue pearl. And that blue pearl, that seed of the soul, is you. And eventually you get the opportunity to absorb all of your experiences back into, as Bart says, he feels that he is being absorbed into the light. Because everything within him is being absorbed back into until he becomes that blue pearl, until he becomes the seed of the soul. And once you become the seed of the soul, the blue pearl, and you've absorbed, then by 1 degree, boom, you're a football field. You are no longer separate from anything. You're no longer going anywhere. You're no longer doing anything. Because you are everything. In this reality, in this world, you are learning that you either are standing in the river of consciousness or you become the river of consciousness. Either you are separate or you are that consciousness. Either you are the universe or you are separate from the universe. It all depends upon the consciousness that you bring to the table. Sadhguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai.